Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today I'm joined by Issam.
Hey everybody.
We will be taking a look ahead at the next round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup, the second round which takes place in Fayetteville, Arkansas on the parcours of the World Championships. Issam, yesterday we recorded the podcast about the World Cup in Waterloo and now we're taking a look ahead here at the next World Cup already. Do you expect more of the same or is the parcours very different?
Well, it's not the same. There's definitely some differences in a way. I think in Fayetteville we have a little bit more variation, if you can say it like that. I think where we were in Waterloo was a little bit more like short intensity in a way. It was a lot of the same, a lot of corners turning around, and I think now with Fayetteville it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more variation in it. I like the section that they have just after the start, that they have to go into the woods with the banking corners and the descent. It's really nice, and I think there's also a very nice long climb in it, and I think those kind of things will make it a bit different from Waterloo.
Personally, I've only seen a video of the parcours in Arkansas. Of course, I've also seen a couple of pictures of Brooke Watts, who has been involved in constructing that parcours. Back then it was still in construction, so I don't know how it will look like tomorrow when all the fences are up and basically everything is there. But from what I've seen is, like you said, it's a very complete parcours. It has a very cool section in the woods, in my opinion, with some downhills. And these downhills, they have 180 degrees corners, but they're flowing corners. It kind of looks like a couple of sections in Namur. I've seen some Swiss crosses as well. It's got some banking in it, so you can carry a lot of speed through it. Well, I guess we'll see tomorrow, but personally I'm quite looking forward to this race.
Yeah, indeed, and I think this will be a repetition in a way for the World Championships. I mean, I think that's also why a lot of riders are looking forward to this race, to just see how the parcours lays. Obviously, the circumstances probably are not going to be the same, but at least they have then a feeling of what they can expect when the season is going to an end.
Yeah, definitely. However, there might be a bit of a party pooper. There is a lot of rain forecasted, rain and thunderstorms, heavy showers. So, from what I've seen, is that they have planted new grass there, and that was then planted somewhere in the beginning of this year. So, when that preview video was made there by Kerry Werner, the grass looked very young. I'm not an expert on anything with grass, but I do know if the grass is still in somewhat the same condition there will be no grass left, and it will be a very, very hard race with elevation in it. So who do you think that a potential very heavy race could suit there? Are you looking in the men's race at Iserbyt again, or do you think that this time maybe Aerts and Hermans will be there for the win?
It depends on how they recover actually from the crashes. I think that Iserbyt was very good. He had a very bad start, and I think that would have hampered his race a little bit if there were not the crashes in the second lap. But Hermans looked very strong. I think Toon, I don't know, it's a bit of a question mark for me, but I definitely think if Hermans recovered from his crashes, from the crash, he will be the stronger guy and probably the one that will bring the battle to Iserbyt. But I think Vanthourenhout can also be someone to watch out for.
Yeah, I definitely agree on Vanthourenhout. What I've seen so far this season is a very strong Quinten Hermans, but just not strong enough. If he has the same day as he had in Waterloo, I think he can compete, but he said it himself. It was one of the best days he had on the cyclocross bike ever. So the odds that he has another great day like that in Arkansas isn't great. But if you then also compare it, I mean, Hermans has a bit of road rash. It doesn't look too bad for him. Same for Toon Aerts. He has a bit of an injury on his knee, but he should be okay. They are all flying by a charter plane towards Fayetteville, so I guess that's another positive thing. However, if I then look back at what I saw this season, in the muddier races, Molenbeek and Gieten, Iserbyt wasn't really there. He got beaten by Aerts and Hermans, so personally I expect that those two riders will have the upper hand, but Michael Vanthourenhout will be with them, and then Iserbyt, I expect if it's a heavy course with also quite some running, then I think Iserbyt will probably be looking for fourth place.
Yeah, that might be the case. Iserbyt hasn't been showing, like you said, his best performances in the mud so far. So if it's really gonna be muddy, if it's really gonna be tough, I think Iserbyt definitely should be happy if he's if he's on the podium, and then we should be looking more to a Vanthourenhout who was very strong in the mud before they went to the States, and definitely also a Toon Aerts that can always bring something special when there is some mud in it and when it's a tough course.
Well, maybe an outsider here is Nils Van Der Putte. He ended 5th in Waterloo, had a very strong last lap, going from 10th to 5th. Definitely had something left in the tank. What do you think he can do?
Well, he's technically very strong as well, so he has some, there is some place for him where he can utilize that his technique in a way. If he can maintain what the day he had in Waterloo, I think he definitely, will be able to do kind of the same thing. Obviously, he was helped a little bit with the crashes and the unfortunate things that happened to other riders, but he was there. He was the guy that was still standing, and that doesn't take anything away from his 5th place. And I definitely think that also in Fayetteville he will be one guy to watch.
The number 7 of Waterloo, Vincent Baastans, he isn't here. What do you think about that decision, Issam?
Well, yeah, it seems that it was something financial. So I don't know. I personally, it's understandable in a way. He already has a lot of, I think the World Cup is not for him a goal. For him, it's a goal to be in the top 50 and have a very high ranking in the UCI ranking in a way. So I think that is his goal. And if financially he's not able to get to Fayetteville, and he's probably then going to Iowa and be there again on Sunday, it's understandable in a way that he does that, but also in a way a bit of a shame, because I think that he can perform also very well in Fayetteville.
Yeah, I agree. The Deschamps Hens Maas team doesn't have the money to put their riders on a charter flight. Dan Soete is going all the way from Waterloo to Fayetteville by car, and I can understand that Vincent Baastans thought that would hamper his performance. And there's also plenty of races in Iowa he can ride to stay in rhythm, and ultimately he isn't aiming for overall GC in the World Cup, so I don't think that that's necessarily a bad decision by him. However, we have to clear up some other things that we didn't mention in our podcast yesterday about Waterloo, because it was already a packed race and also a packed podcast, but we now have the confirmation that Thibaut Nys won't be starting in Fayetteville. He has a broken collarbone. Yesterday we were still unsure about that, but Thibaut Nys broken collarbone, real shame for him, isn't it, Issam?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we were doubting a little bit if it would be a fracture or not, because we didn't really see the footage of his crash. We only saw the TV coverage. But I think it was today in the morning we saw some footage that cleared how bad the crash actually was. And when you saw that, you can only conclude that the fracture would be something that would be certain. And yeah, in the end, it's very unfortunate. And I think he will be out for a little bit. And then he has to just try to get back in a rhythm and be prepared for probably December, maybe middle November, something like that.
Yeah, I think middle November is probably when he can make a comeback, or otherwise in December. You always look around 6 weeks to recover, but cyclocross riders do this faster. The fracture didn't look like the worst fracture. He's undergoing surgery, I think, as we speak. He was flown back this morning, and I think he is undergoing surgery as we are recording this, so that's Tuesday evening. Some more news. Dan Soete, I already just mentioned him going to Fayetteville by car. He had an issue with his shoe. That's what we saw. We saw him having a mechanical when he was in the top 10. But it was something with his shoe, so he needed to take off his shoe because it was broken, run or ride to the pits, I don't know, get a new shoe and continue. Managed to recover decently from that. And finally, Ryan Kamp also had 2 mechanicals when he was in 4th place, so that explains why he dropped out of the top 10 briefly to ultimately come back in 8th. And on that note, Issam, what do you think? Kamp, is he maybe an outsider for the podium, considering he was actually in 4th or 5th position before those 2 mechanicals?
Yeah. I think Kamp definitely showed himself very well in Waterloo, and it was a strong race. it's going to be the question if he doesn't, because he feels very good right now, that he maybe wants to do a little bit more at the start and then kind of has a setback in the middle of the race. So if he's able to control himself in a way, especially if it's going to be a lot tougher, a very hard parcours in a way, then he should be able to have a good result. And I think the ones that are very good in pacing themselves, like Lars van der Haar, although he doesn't like the mud, are probably going to be the guys that you're going to see more in front.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But if I looked at these results from Waterloo, there was also one thing that noticed me: the tremendous amount of UCI points that were there. I mean, I already knew there were a lot of UCI points on the line, but now it just really struck me. If you end 40th in the World Cup, you earn 20 points, which is equal to a C2 win. A P8 is equal to 80 UCI points, which is equal to a C1 win. When I look at this, I realize that basically if you missed out on coming in this World Cup right now, it will be very hard for you to come in that top 50 and get like your starting place. I mean, Bastans has pretty much secured him for a season in the World Cup, and I think the same goes for the riders who made the trip. Like for Stringe, he already has 131 points. There's 2 more World Cups which he will be guaranteed to start. I guess it's very hard for these riders to now drop out and for other riders to come into that top 50.
Yeah, I agree, and that it's in one way it's a solution, in another way it's a problem, because in a way it makes the World Cup very important. So it's becoming now the more important, which it already was, by the way, but now it's even more important than it was. But it also is a bit unfair, because there are some individuals that don't have the money to get to Fayetteville and to Waterloo and Iowa, to the States. There are also some that just don't really want to go, and now they are forced to go because of these UCI points. So it's a bit two-sided, but at the end I think it's not bad for the World Cup in general.
I think it's an interesting discussion that we can have perhaps in a later phase, but this is just a preview podcast. We shouldn't make that too long. I think we should go on to make some predictions here for the race in Fayetteville. Issam, who do you reckon 1, 2, 3 in the men's race?
I'm gonna say Quinten Hermans. I really want to see him win. And then for second and third, I think Vanthourenhout, and then maybe third Aerts.
Yeah, I basically already said my prediction like just now. I'm going to go with the same 1-2 as in Gieten. So that's Aerts in front of Quinten Hermans and Michael Vanthourenhout in third place. Let's go on then and talk about the women's race. We saw a very exciting women's race in Waterloo. Now we're going to Fayetteville. What do you expect? Do you expect a big scrap between the same riders, or do you maybe expect other riders like Neff to be able to compete with Vos and Brand, because Neff now has a much better starting position?
Yeah, I agree, and I think as well that Neff, this parcours is going to be more suited to Neff, especially if it's going to be a little bit more muddy and a little bit tougher. I think then Neff has a chance to be much more in front than she already was. And to answer the first part, I think, for example, Vos, it's for me a bit of a question mark on a parcours like this. Obviously, on a faster parcours, we knew that she could do something. Obviously, what she did to win the first race she enters, that is obviously amazing. But for me, in Fayetteville, it's really going to be in confirmation if she's going to be somebody that's going to be fighting for a couple more podiums, or it's just on the faster parcours. And then obviously Brand and Betsema are going to be there, and maybe even a Worst that's going to be in the mix.
Yeah, I definitely think Brand and Betsema will be up there. For Worst, if I'm looking at the muddy race, I do expect her to struggle a bit. Same for Kastelein, I think. But I am really looking at Jolanda Neff here. She rode a super strong and also like well-paced race in Waterloo. Not going for the tactic to pass 20 riders in lap 1 and then basically be exploded. She took it easy, eventually came to the front, lacked a bit. But if you look at this parcours, a bit more elevation, it's probably going to be a bit heavier. If I look at her experience as mountain bike rider and her current form, I am looking at Jolanda Neff as a serious threat for a podium, and I may even dare say a win.
Yeah, the win I don't know, because I think I think Brand and Betsema are gonna be there as well. But she definitely is gonna be someone to watch for a podium. Yeah, I can say that with confidence.
And what do you think about Yara Kastelein? She usually does well on parcourses with elevation, so quite some climbing. She had 2 mechanicals, another thing we didn't mention in yesterday's podcast, but she had 2 mechanicals in Waterloo, which caused her to drop from the breakaway. Or breakaway, the front group, but you guys know what I mean. Anyway, what do you expect for her? She, of course, won the Koppenberg Cross a couple of years ago.
It's very difficult to say, because I think with Kastelein it's also a bit of if she has her day, she can be very good, but if she doesn't, she might not even end up in the top 5. So very hard to say. I think the parcours should be a little bit better suited to her than Waterloo for sure. But if that means that she's gonna be up there, bring up the fight for a podium or victory, that's a bit tougher to say, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't expect her that high. I already briefly touched upon her. I expect her to be in the top 10, but somewhere around P5. I actually expect her to be around Eva Lechner. Eva Lechner also had a good race actually in Waterloo. Another thing we didn't mention in our Waterloo podcast, but well, forgive us, a lot happened. But Lechner was running in P8, not that far off the breakaway even at some point. But Lechner, I mean, she had a mechanical or crash. Something happened in that last lap, which caused her to drop down a lot of positions. So her last lap time was also 2.5 minutes slower than all her laps before. So that was really weird. But I think Lechner, this parcours should also suit her based on her history. And I'm looking at Lechner for maybe an outside shot at a decent spot in the top 10, like somewhere between 5th and 7th, basically where I also expect Kastelein to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lechner definitely an outsider, and the parcours also is going to be suiting her a little bit more, definitely with her mountain bike experience. I think the ones that do a little bit more mountain bike definitely going to be more in their. It's more going towards a mountain bike parcours in a way. Definitely not the same kind of thing, but it has some elements that are very known in the mountain bike as well. So I think she will be up there, and she, for top 10 for sure. Because I mean, in Waterloo, which is not a parcours I would, that she would be good at, and she was very good. Obviously, she had that problem, or we don't really know what happened, but the 2 minutes loss is not something that happens just like that. So yeah, I definitely expect her in the top 10, and maybe even in the top 5. Who knows?
And last name that comes from the mountain bike that I would like to mention here is the name of Capablanca Vas, 4th at the Olympics. What do you think?
Yeah, difficult. Depends on how her day will be on the bike. I'm not gonna lie. I think it will be interesting to see if after one race where she looked a little bit rusty, it was a bit of the same like Neff, but then a bit different. I don't know. So we'll see with Vas how that goes. And I think if it's gonna be pure power, she's gonna be having a smaller advantage in a way, because then technique is also gonna be there, but not really. It's not gonna be common. If it's gonna be a little bit faster, I think she's gonna struggle a little bit as well.
I think she's going to struggle regardless of the parcours, because if it's muddy, I expect some running sections. There's also a long stairs, so quite some dismounting actually I expect to see, especially in the women's race, and she really struggles with that. So I guess I expect Vas in the top 10 because her form is good, but I am not going to go with a podium again in my predictions.
Yeah, I would do the same. Yeah.
Well, talking about those predictions, I would like to go first now. I'm predicting a win for Lucinda Brandt in front of Jolanda Neff and Denise Betsema.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult. Considering that it's gonna be muddy, I think Betsema is gonna win. And then it's gonna be second for Brandt, and then third for... Tough, I have a lot of names in my head. Let's say Jolanda Neff. Maybe she's gonna be on the podium.
Well, Issam, thank you for being here. I think we've covered it all for our preview of the World Cup in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
No worries, thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. If you're wondering where to watch the World Cup in Fayetteville, make sure to check our website, cyclocross.social/livestream, and you're able to find your live stream there. We will be making a podcast about that World Cup, late night recording for us. Again, busy times, but thankfully with some good racing. So catch you guys then after the World Cup in Fayetteville. Goodbye.